began to beat, their deep sound echoing across the village, signaling the start of the harvest festival. The air was alive with excitement as the villagers, adorned in colorful clothes, filled the square. Children ran through the streets, laughing, while elders shared stories of past harvests. The smells of roasted meat and fresh fruit mixed with the sweet scent of flowers. It was a time for celebration, for honoring the earth that had given so much. Among the dancers and singers, Amina moved through the crowd with a presence that demanded attention. Her large head, often the subject of gossip, was held high. Despite the whispers that followed her, she walked proudly, her eyes sharp and observant. She had always been the one to outthink others, her mind as keen as a knife. The village had learned to respect her intelligence, even if they could not always understand it. She was a woman of boldness, not afraid to challenge expectations, and today, the festival was her stage. A procession began, the prince's arrival. Horses pranced, and the crowd parted to make way for him. The prince, Olamide, sat tall on his horse, his royal cloak flowing behind him like a river of gold. He waved at the crowd, smiling, and the villagers cheered. His charm was known throughout the land, as was his habit of making light of those he deemed unimportant. His laughter filled the air, a sound that could make people feel both welcome and uneasy. He was adored, but many feared his sharp tongue. He was used to being admired, used to being in control. As he surveyed the gathering, his eyes caught sight of Amina. Without missing a beat, he turned to his friends, a laugh escaping his lips. His voice rang out clearly over the crowd, carrying his mockery for all to hear. "Will your big head even fit inside the palace gates?" he said, his words sharp and mocking. His friends joined in the laughter, and a ripple of chuckles spread through the crowd. Amina felt the sting of his words. Her face flushed, not from shame, but from the burn of humiliation. The laughter of the villagers, once a familiar sound, now felt like a blow. But she straightened her back, refusing to give in to the weight of their eyes. Her thoughts were clear and cold. "Let him mock," she whispered to herself. "This is far from over." As the prince turned away, still laughing with his companions, an old village elder approached Amina. Her skin was wrinkled, her eyes sharp despite her age. She leaned close, her voice soft, but carrying a weight that made Amina pause. "One who mocks what they don't understand will soon find themselves in a dangerous game," the elder whispered, the words crackling in the air like the rustle of dry leaves. Amina looked up at the elder, confusion swirling in her mind. The old woman's eyes met hers, steady and knowing, but she offered no explanation. Amina stood there, pondering the cryptic words. What did it mean? What danger lay in mocking? And how was this a game? The noise of the festival continued around her, but Amina's mind was far from the music. The prince's laughter still echoed in her ears, but now it was tangled with the elder's warning. She watched the prince move through the crowd, his head held high, his charm as effortless as the sun in the sky. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't one to take mockery lying down. The elder's words had sparked something inside her, something deeper than anger. It was a pull, a strange sense of purpose. The festival continued, the music swelled, and the villagers danced in circles, their laughter rising again. But Amina's mind was elsewhere, wrapped in the weight of the elder's warning. The mocking words of the prince no longer felt like an insult. They felt like a challenge. This was just the beginning. The fire had been lit, and it would not be extinguished so easily. She took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing as she watched Olamide disappear into the crowd. Something told her this was not the last time their paths would cross. The game had just begun. Amina stood out in the village, not because of her large head, but because of her brilliant mind and courage. Her quick thinking had earned her a reputation for solving problems that others couldn't even begin to understand. When the village faced challenges, it was Amina they called on. Whether it was finding a missing child, figuring out how to increase the crop yield, or helping resolve disputes, Amina was always the one to solve it. But despite her sharp intellect, people never let her forget her large head. They whispered behind her back, calling her the one with the big head, as though her mind was somehow less important than her appearance. The teasing didn't bother Amina much, not in the way it did others. She walked with her head held high, always carrying herself with quiet confidence. She knew what mattered most was not how she looked, but what was inside her mind. To her, her intellect was a gift, not something to be ashamed of. Yet, the villagers couldn't help but mock her. They saw the size of her head and decided it made her different, something to laugh at. But Amina had no time for their judgments. She had bigger things to focus on, like proving that wisdom was far more valuable than appearances. Then there was Prince Olamide. He had never known a day of hardship. Born to wealth and power, everything in his life was handed to him. The people cheered his every move, praising him for his good looks, his charm, and his royal blood. But Olamide's confidence, born from years of being admired, was built on a fragile foundation. Beneath the royal cloak, he was terrified of being exposed for what he truly was. A young man who had never had to struggle, never had to think critically or solve his own problems. His wealth and title made him seem superior, but deep down, he feared being found out. To the prince, the villagers were beneath him, mere tools to admire his greatness. He couldn't understand their simple lives, and he didn't care to. They existed to serve him, to cheer for him. His attitude was one of superiority, and it made him feel safe. But this safety came at a cost. Olamide used mockery to maintain his position, making jokes about the villagers to keep them in their place. His laughter, once charming, now carried a sting. He laughed at their flaws, never once thinking that anyone might turn the tables on him. Amina's first real interaction with Olamide was brief, but it was enough to set the stage for the conflict to come. He had mocked her in front of the entire village during the harvest festival, laughing at her large head, making a joke as though she were nothing more than a subject for his amusement. The sound of his laughter echoed in Amina's ears, and though her face flushed with embarrassment, her mind was already racing. She would not let this go. Amina had always seen Olamide for what he truly was, someone who thought he was better than everyone else simply because he had been born into wealth and power. But that didn't impress her. Intelligence and wisdom were what truly mattered. In the wake of the mockery, Amina's resolve solidified. She would make Olamide regret what he had said. She had no intention of allowing a prince, someone so full of himself, so blind to his own faults, to walk over her. She would show him that there were consequences for mocking someone who possessed the one thing he lacked, wisdom. But she couldn't do it with brute force. She had to outsmart him. Amina began to plot, to think of a way to make him see just how little he really knew. She knew that if she could get him to underestimate her once more, it would be his downfall. Meanwhile, Olamide had his own concerns. On the surface, he remained the charming, confident prince everyone admired. But deep down, he feared that his ignorance would one day be exposed. He had never faced a true challenge, never been forced to think critically about anything. It was easier to make fun of others, to laugh at their shortcomings, than to confront his own. His mockery of Amina was an attempt to maintain control, to make sure no one could see the cracks in his royal armor. If he could keep the villagers laughing at Amina, then maybe they wouldn't question his ability to lead. But as the days passed, Olamide began to notice something strange. Amina didn't react the way others did. Instead of shrinking away, instead of bowing to him, she held her head higher, as though the mockery didn't affect her at all. This only fueled his frustration. How could someone so beneath him act so unbothered? Amina, in his eyes, was just a peasant, someone to be overlooked. But she was slowly becoming a problem he couldn't ignore. Amina, on the other hand, had already decided she was not going to be overlooked. She was going to make Olamide face the consequences of his arrogance. The prince's life had been built on privilege, and Amina knew that one day, that privilege would run out. It would be her mind, her wit, that would bring him down, and she would do it in a way he could never anticipate. As the tension between Amina and Olamide grew, it became clear that this story was about more than just a battle between a prince and a peasant. It was about wisdom versus arrogance, humility versus entitlement. Amina's plan was beginning to take shape, while Olamide remained blissfully unaware. His every move pushing both of them closer to a confrontation neither could escape. Amina began her plot quietly, keeping her observations to herself. She knew that to defeat Olamide, she had to understand him completely. From the way he carried himself to the words he spoke, every detail mattered. She watched how he interacted with others, his tendency to laugh at their mistakes, and his fear of being challenged. But what struck her most was his arrogance, the belief that no one could outwit him, that his title and wealth made him invincible. Amina knew that this pride was his greatest weakness. She would exploit it, slowly and carefully, until he would regret ever mocking her. The king's announcement came like a storm. The village buzzed with excitement and apprehension as the elders gathered to announce the series of challenges designed to determine who would take over leadership once the king passed on. These trials would test intelligence, wisdom, and bravery, qualities Amina had in abundance. She knew this was her moment, her chance to show the village and Prince Olamide that true leadership wasn't about titles or wealth, but the strength of the mind. Without hesitation, Amina made her decision. She would enter the competition. But as soon as her intentions became known, resistance came swiftly. Her family, concerned for her, warned her against challenging the status quo. "You're a woman," they said. "You don't belong in these trials." The elders frowned upon her decision, reminding her that such competitions were not for women, let alone for one with a big head like hers. But Amina's resolve was unshakable. She knew she had to fight for her place, to break the boundaries that limited her, and prove that intelligence was not bound by gender or appearance. "This is my chance to show them all," she thought, her mind already racing with strategies. She wouldn't let tradition dictate her future. The first challenge came swiftly, testing the contestants' intelligence with riddles and puzzles. Olamide approached the task with his usual confidence, certain that his royal training had prepared him for any challenge. He breezed through the first few questions, his charming smile never faltering. But when the harder riddles arrived, his smile wavered. His answers were often wrong or incomplete. He struggled. Amina, however, saw through the riddles with ease. Each puzzle was like a key to a door she'd been waiting to open. With her quick thinking, she answered each one correctly, her sharp mind lighting up the room with each solution. The villagers, who had watched her with skepticism, began to murmur in awe. They could no longer deny her brilliance. Olamide's pride began to chip away. He had never been outsmarted in public before, let alone by someone he considered beneath him. His discomfort was palpable as the challenges wore on, but he refused to show weakness. He kept up appearances, but the frustration inside him grew. The second challenge tested the contestants' ability to strategize and solve a complex problem involving the village's resources. The task seemed simple at first: devise a plan to allocate food, water, and manpower to various villages in the region. Olamide, used to making quick, decisive decisions, quickly proposed a solution, but the judges were unimpressed. His plan lacked depth and foresight, missing crucial details that Amina picked up with ease. She took her time, analyzing every variable before presenting a plan that was not only practical, but also innovative. Her solution impressed the judges, securing another victory for her and leaving Olamide stung by her success. Olamide's frustration deepened with every round. He was used to being admired, to winning effortlessly. Yet Amina's intellect and poise were making him look foolish. The more she succeeded, the more he felt his control slipping away. He couldn't let this continue. He had to find a way to stop her. Realizing that Amina might actually win, Olamide's desperation grew. He couldn't allow a peasant to best him, especially not a woman. His solution was simple: destroy her reputation. In a fit of jealousy, he spread rumors that Amina must be using witchcraft to gain her advantage. "She's the one with the dark magic," he whispered to anyone who would listen. "Her victories are not earned through her mind, but through wicked sorcery." The rumors spread like wildfire through the village. Some villagers, easily swayed by Olamide's royal presence, began to doubt Amina's abilities. "No one could be so clever without help," they whispered. Others, however, stood by her, knowing that Amina's victories were the result of hard work, perseverance, patience, and a mind sharper than any they had ever known. The village split in two, half believing in Amina's abilities, and the other half whispering that she must have some dark power at her disposal. Amina felt the weight of the rumors pressing down on her. She knew that the villagers were divided, but she refused to back down. If Olamide thought she would be intimidated, he was sorely mistaken. She decided it was time to address the lies head-on. With quiet strength, Amina stepped before the village. "I have earned every victory through my mind and my efforts," she declared, her voice steady. "I don't need magic to prove my worth. My intelligence is my own, and it will stand on its own merit." Her words rang out across the village, and many of the villagers who had once doubted her began to rally behind her. They remembered the strength she had shown when the prince mocked her, the quiet confidence that had never wavered. Amina wasn't just a clever woman, she was a leader, someone who commanded respect. As her words echoed through the village, something shifted in Olamide. His plan to sabotage her had backfired. Instead of weakening her, the rumors had only made her stronger. The villagers began to see her for who she truly was, not just the big-headed girl they had once mocked, but a woman of intellect, strength, and unwavering determination. Olamide, however, found himself growing more agitated with each passing day. His attempts to discredit her had only fueled the fires of admiration for Amina. He was losing control of the situation, and he knew it. His desperation reached a boiling point. Olamide had underestimated the power of Amina's mind and the strength of her resolve. Now he would have to face the consequences of his arrogance and deceit. The conflict had reached a tipping point, and neither he nor Amina could turn back now. Final challenge was upon them. The air was thick with anticipation as the king stepped forward, his presence commanding silence from the gathered villagers. This last trial would be the ultimate test, the one that would decide who would take over the leadership of the village. The challenge was an ancient riddle, whispered to be impossible to solve. The stakes were higher than ever, and everyone knew this moment would define the future of the village. Both Amina and Olamide stepped into the center of the square, each ready for the challenge, but carrying very different burdens. Olamide's arrogance, once his greatest strength, now seemed like a weight dragging him down. The prince, who had been so confident in his superiority throughout the competition, now faced the riddle with growing uncertainty. Amina, however, stood poised, her calm demeanor betraying nothing of the swirling thoughts within her mind. She had faced much worse in her life than any riddle. This challenge would be no different. The king began by reading the first few clues of the riddle aloud. It was intricate and perplexing, designed to test every facet of intelligence and insight. Olamide's confidence, however, was quickly replaced by frustration. As he attempted to piece together the puzzle, his mind raced, but his arrogance kept him from approaching it methodically. He was accustomed to solving problems with quick answers and brute force. This riddle demanded far more. "I can't lose to her," Olamide thought, his fingers tapping nervously on the ground. He watched Amina carefully, seeing her eyes flicker with concentration. Her calmness seemed to mock him, and that only spurred his determination. He couldn't let a peasant, a woman, best him in front of the entire village. Amina, on the other hand, remained quiet. She read the riddle again, taking in every word. Her mind worked with precision, a flurry of ideas filtering through her thoughts. Her sharp intellect had carried her through every challenge, and it would carry her through this one too. "This is it," she thought. "The moment I prove that wisdom wins, not power." Olamide's desperation began to grow. Unable to crack the riddle on his own, he turned to a dark thought: cheating. He couldn't risk losing, not after everything that had happened. As the judges discussed the riddle's clues, he saw his chance. Amina's notes were on the ground beside her, clearly visible. In a moment of panic, he snatched a quick glance at her scribbled answers, hoping to steal her insight. His heart raced as he saw what he believed was the key to solving the riddle. He quickly jotted down his answer and stood, ready to present it to the judges. But before he could make his move, an unexpected voice rang out, halting him in his tracks. The village elder, the one who had warned Amina earlier in the competition, stepped forward. His voice was deep and commanding as he addressed the entire gathering. "You cannot cheat destiny," he boomed, his eyes fixed on Olamide. "The prince's lineage is cursed. Those who mock wisdom will face failure." A stunned silence fell over the village. Amina's heart raced, but she held her ground. The elder's words, however, were a shock to everyone, most especially Olamide. The crowd was in disbelief as the elder continued. The elder's revelation was like a thunderclap. He explained that Olamide's family had long been cursed, a curse that would strike down anyone who mocked wisdom or those with true knowledge. The prince's arrogance, his mocking of Amina's intellect, has sealed his fate, the elder declared. This curse is not a mere superstition, it is the truth of his bloodline. Olamide stood frozen, his face pale. The weight of the elder's words pressed down on him like a stone. For the first time, he felt fear. The kind of fear that came with the realization that no amount of wealth or power could protect him from his own flaws. Amina, still calm and composed, turned her attention back to the riddle. Her mind was sharp, focused solely on solving it. She stepped forward, eyes narrowed in concentration, and began piecing together the clues methodically. Her calm confidence was a stark contrast to Olamide's panic. With each step, she moved closer to the solution. The crowd watched in awe as Amina's quiet brilliance shone through. She worked her way through the complex puzzle with ease, each clue falling into place as she unraveled the mystery. With a final, decisive breath, Amina spoke. "The answer is the path of the moon," she declared. Her voice rang clear and certain, and the crowd erupted in disbelief. The riddle had been solved, and Amina had triumphed once again. The judges, astonished, nodded in approval. "The riddle is solved," they said, their voices filled with awe. The villagers cheered, many of them stunned by the clarity and precision of Amina's solution. But Olamide wasn't done. In a desperate bid to salvage his pride, he tried to make one last attempt to manipulate the situation. "There must be some mistake," he cried. The riddle's true meaning was lost in translation. The clues must be wrong. His words were empty, a hollow attempt to save face. The villagers, however, were not fooled. The crowd began to murmur, their discontent with Olamide growing louder. They had seen his arrogance, his attempts to cheat, and now they saw his failure. His mockery of Amina, once seen as harmless teasing, was now understood for what it truly was, a reflection of his deeper flaws. Olamide's humiliation was complete. His attempts to cheat and deceive had failed. The villagers, once divided in their loyalties, now saw the truth. The prince's arrogance had led to his downfall. His desperate attempts to maintain control had only exposed his ignorance and weakness. As Olamide stood there, defeated, the villagers turned to Amina. Her triumph was not just about solving the riddle, it was about showing the village what true leadership looked like. Amina had proven that wisdom, integrity, and humility were the qualities of a true leader, not wealth or titles. The villagers who had once doubted her now saw her for what she truly was, a leader in every sense of the word. Amina stood tall, her heart filled with pride as the villagers celebrated her victory. She had not only outsmarted the prince, but had shown them all the power of knowledge and wisdom. Olamide's reign of arrogance was over, and Amina had emerged victorious, the true leader of the village. The king's wrath, Olamide's punishment. The king stood in the center of the gathered villagers, his eyes dark with anger as he surveyed his son, Olamide. The prince's arrogance had cost him not only the respect of the village, but also his title and position of power. The king's voice thundered across the square, echoing in the hearts of everyone present. "You have disgraced not only yourself, but the royal family and the entire kingdom," the king declared. "Your arrogance, your manipulation, your attempts to cheat and belittle others, these have cost you more than just a competition. They have cost you the trust of the people." The villagers held their breath as the king turned to the prince, his face stern and unforgiving. "I hereby strip you of your title and power," the king said with finality. "You will learn the consequences of your actions, Olamide. It is time for you to truly understand what it means to lead, and it will not come easily." Olamide, his head hung low, felt the full weight of his father's words. The prince, once confident and entitled, now stood before the village, his arrogance shattered, his status gone. Amina's moment of recognition. As Olamide's punishment was announced, the king's gaze shifted to Amina, whose steady courage and wisdom had earned her the respect of everyone present. The king's voice softened, yet still carried the authority of a ruler who recognized true strength. "You, Amina, have shown wisdom beyond your years," he said, his eyes gleaming with genuine admiration. "More wisdom than even my own son. You have proven yourself to be a true leader." Amina's heart raced as the king turned to her with an offer. "I would like to appoint you as the chief strategist for the village. You have earned this honor, and I believe you are the one who can lead us with intelligence and fairness." The villagers erupted into applause, cheering for Amina's success. For a moment, Amina stood stunned, her thoughts racing. The position was a great honor, one she had not expected, but she knew that her journey was far from over. Amina's refusal, leadership beyond titles. Amina raised her hand, quieting the crowd with a simple gesture. She turned to the king, her voice steady but filled with wisdom. "I appreciate your faith in me, your majesty," Amina began, "but I must respectfully decline your offer to become chief strategist. Leadership is not defined by titles or positions of power. It is about guiding others, teaching them, and helping them grow." The crowd fell silent, surprised by her decision. The king, too, looked taken aback, but he listened carefully as Amina continued. "I believe my true place is back in my village, where I can help my people, my friends, my family, by sharing what I've learned. Leadership isn't about control, it's about uplifting others. I will lead by example, not by power," she concluded, her voice firm and resolute. Though the king was initially surprised by her refusal, he respected her decision. The villagers, too, nodded in approval, understanding the depth of Amina's wisdom. She had not only proven her intelligence, but also her integrity. The prince's humbling journey. After the announcement, Olamide stood apart from the others, his gaze fixed on the ground. The weight of his father's judgment, the loss of his title, and the public humiliation were more than he had ever expected. He had once mocked Amina and belittled her for her intelligence, but now, standing alone, he felt the sting of his own arrogance. In a moment of quiet reflection, Olamide approached Amina, his voice soft and filled with genuine regret. "I was wrong to mock you," he admitted, his tone vulnerable. "I thought I knew everything. I thought my status, my power, could make me a great leader. But you've shown me that wisdom doesn't come from titles. It comes from understanding, from humility." Amina listened carefully to his words. Though she had once been hurt by his mockery, she saw in him a man who was beginning to realize the error of his ways. Her voice, though serious, held no malice. Amina's conditions for mentorship. "You have much to learn, Olamide," Amina said, her eyes locked with his. "But I will teach you, if you are willing to listen. There is one condition, however. You must first learn humility and respect. Without that, you will never understand what true leadership means." Olamide nodded, his expression earnest. "I understand. I will learn. I want to be a better person, a better leader." Amina studied him for a moment, her eyes softening. "Then we will begin. But remember, this journey is not easy. True strength lies not in power, but in wisdom and humility." Olamide's pledge, a new beginning. Olamide, once the prince of arrogance, now stood before Amina as a humble man seeking change. "I pledge to learn from you," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I will follow your guidance. I will become a better leader, someone worthy of respect." Amina nodded, her expression thoughtful. "The path will be difficult, Olamide, but I believe you have the potential to change. If you walk this path with an open heart and mind, you will find that wisdom is the greatest power of all." With that, Olamide made his vow to Amina. It was the beginning of a long and challenging journey, but for the first time, Olamide felt a sense of hope. Amina returns to her village. A new era. Amina returned to her village, her heart filled with a sense of purpose. She had not taken a position of power or status, but she had gained something far more important: respect and a chance to lead by example. She began teaching the villagers, sharing her knowledge and wisdom with them, empowering them to think critically and work together for the greater good. Under her guidance, the village flourished. People no longer relied on a title to determine who was a leader. They saw leadership in the actions and wisdom of those around them. Amina's influence grew, and her story spread beyond the village, inspiring others to seek wisdom over power. The legacy of the prince and the wise woman. Years passed, and the story of Amina and Olamide became a legend, told far and wide. Olamide, having learned the lessons Amina had taught him, ruled his kingdom with newfound humility and intelligence. His arrogance had been replaced by respect for others, and his leadership was marked by wisdom and understanding. Amina, too, continued to lead her village, proving that true leadership came not from titles, but from the ability to uplift others. Her legacy endured, a symbol of what it meant to lead with wisdom, humility, and grace. The tale of Amina and Olamide, served as a reminder to all that wisdom and humility were the true marks of great leadership, and that those who sought to lead with power alone would eventually find themselves humbled. The final lesson: mockery brings consequences. The elder's words, so often dismissed by Olamide, ultimately proved true. His mocking of Amina, born from arrogance and ignorance, sealed his fate. As his manipulations unraveled and his attempts at cheating backfired, the consequences of belittling others became clear. The prince's downfall serves as a powerful reminder that mockery, especially when it stems from a place of pride, often leads to failure. In the end, the story emphasizes that wisdom, humility, and respect are the true pillars of strength, not prideful arrogance. The power of wisdom over pride. Amina's victory over Olamide demonstrates a fundamental truth. True power lies in intellect, wisdom, and humility, not in physical strength or high status. While the prince relied on manipulation and arrogance, Amina's sharp mind and steady resilience allowed her to prevail. She outwitted her adversary, not with force but with thoughtfulness and clarity, showing that wisdom is not just an asset, it's a form of strength. The story leaves a lasting message that wisdom, courage, and humility can overcome even the most formidable opponents, proving that the greatest leaders lead with their hearts and minds. Cultural insight: the village's core values. This story also reflects the core values of the village, where respect for elders, the pursuit of wisdom, and the importance of character define one's worth. In the village, it's not appearances or physical traits that make a leader, but the strength of their heart and mind. The villagers, by supporting Amina and recognizing her wisdom, reinforce these cultural ideals. Her journey isn't just one of personal triumph, it is a reflection of what the village believes to be true leadership. The village's respect for elders and the value placed on wisdom serve as key cultural cornerstones that highlight the importance of virtue over titles. Betrayal and relationships: the complex nature of respect. The prince's mockery created a rift between him and Amina, revealing the delicate and often complex nature of respect within societal hierarchies. Amina's decision to stand up for herself, despite the prince's higher status, reveals that respect cannot be demanded based on one's position. It must be earned through actions and understanding. The story underscores the idea that mockery is not only harmful, it can cause the breakdown of relationships, creating divides that are difficult to repair. True respect, as shown through Amina's actions, is built on humility, understanding, and integrity, rather than on one's title or power. Manipulation and vulnerability: Olamide's downfall. Olamide's attempts to manipulate the situation through lies, trickery, and deceit ultimately led to his downfall. His efforts to discredit Amina and undermine her position were driven by a deep-seated fear of losing to her. But in the end, his vulnerability, his arrogance, and manipulation was exposed for all to see. This part of the story demonstrates the dangers of manipulation and exploitation for personal gain. By focusing on deceit rather than true merit, Olamide lost everything. His vulnerabilities became the very factors that led to his public humiliation. Justice and consequences: standing up for what is right. The ultimate triumph of justice in this story lies in Amina's victory and Olamide's fall. Despite the prince's numerous attempts to manipulate and sabotage the situation, justice prevailed because Amina stood firm in her beliefs, guided by wisdom, integrity, and courage. The story reinforces the message that standing up for what is right, even in the face of adversity, will ultimately lead to justice. Amina's refusal to back down, her insistence on leading with wisdom, demonstrated that justice is not just about winning. It's about doing what is right, no matter the cost. It is a testament to the power of standing by one's principles, even when others doubt them. This reflection serves as the culmination of Amina's journey and provides a moral framework for the story. Through the lens of African cultural values, the tale underscores the importance of wisdom, humility, and respect, and highlights the destructive consequences of pride and manipulation. In the end, it's not status or appearance that defines greatness. It's the strength of character, the willingness to learn, and the respect one shows to others.